Hello everyone, welcome back to OCD Recovery's YouTube channel. Today I'm going to do a follow-up video to the video I did the other day called The Fear of Uncomfortable Sensations. Since physical manifestations of anxiety and just basically uncomfortable sensations ranging from anything such as somatic OCD to just chronic anxiety such as GAD, such as say groinal responses with POCD or just any sort of really discomfort that presents itself in a physical manner is what I talked about. And I got a lot of feedback from that video. So Rob thought it would be good if I did a follow-up video called The Fear of Being Stuck with Anxiety Forever. And then he wanted me to cover how I've made so much progress on that. What are the things that I see that work? What are the things I don't believe work and why people stay stuck? So before we go any further, you can please subscribe down below. Lots of great stuff going up on the channels. A lot more videos to come. So when I first started my OCD recovery journey with somatic OCD, well, it actually started with tinnitus or tinnitus. So I woke up one night with ringing in my ears. It was severely disrupting my life because I was so scared of it. It took me about 2 to 3 months to realize that the sound itself wasn't actually what was causing the distress. It certainly was annoying, and it certainly didn't let me sleep very much because I was so afraid of it. But the fear I had about it, that constant worrying, constant internal measuring and checking, was what was really keeping it alive. And then once I realized that it was okay for it to be there, over time it started to come down. And that's when I developed somatic OCD when I was driving on the road. So, we always talk about those latching points. It latched for me while I was driving. So that was very, very, very scary. So I was, especially because it was blinking first. And I said to myself, what in the fuck is going on as I was driving? I still remember it clear as day. So when we look at all of the stuff out there, when it comes to anxiety, we see lots of different stuff. We see stuff where people say they're treatment resistant, they're trying, transcranial TMS stimulation, or they're trying deep brain surgery, deep brain stimulation, and even lobectomies. We're getting pieces of their brain cut out. So all these really severe cases of anxiety where people, when I've watched the videos, the one thing I believe all of them are missing is they're not actually covering the belief of the anxiety itself. So this is why Self-Help for Your Nerves and why Claire Week's Self-Help for Your Nerves and Paul David's That Last a Life on the reading list can be really good for understanding why the physical manifestations and why the discomfort stays. So the first 9 months of my recovery journey, I had minimal anxiety symptoms in the somatic realm. I was very anxious with tinnitus or tinnitus. And then once I kind of recovered from that and it switched over to sensory motor, so blinking for a little bit and the majority swallowing and saliva for 18 months and so forth, I wasn't really that anxious. I actually was going months and months without any anxiety whatsoever. But what happened is over time, as my fear started to come down, I started to develop other symptoms. So people always ask me, or I talk to people in the community and you hear people asking, is OCD recovery a linear straight shot? So it's not a straight shot. So what usually happens with most people is you might get over one major fear and then other ones that kind of were dormant will pop up. So like my body dysmorphic fear, which I had for about 15 years and still do to a degree, probably needs the most work of anything left in my recovery. And just listening to other people, but that's another topic in itself. So I really developed these very strong physical chronic anxiety symptoms. I mean, really strong. Waking up, jolting throughout the night, multiple times a night, wasn't sleeping too well, irritability and anger based off the irrational beliefs that I was holding that my life should be easier. So the conditional self-acceptance that's covered very well in the Myth of Self-Esteem. I'd say chapters 14 through 18 or maybe 15 through 20 in the Myth of Self-Esteem are really good when he breaks down Buddhism and he talks about the Dalai Lama and his perspectives on unconditional life acceptance. So I have a lot of conditional life acceptance. So it basically was just yanking up the thermometer on my physical manifestations of anxiety because it was a loop. Like I'd have a symptom, I didn't want it there, and I would try to rid myself of the way I was feeling in the moment. So obsession, compulsion, obsessive compulsive disorder, just over and over and over. It could be literally called obsessive compulsive loop if you want to, OCL. That's really a more accurate term of what it is because it is a disorder we can recover from. You'll more than likely still have the genetic component, but you can recover from it. It's not terminal in the way we once thought. So it had these physical manifestations of anxiety. And then mind you, this is after everything I'd already known working on my OCD for almost a year. So I understood unconditional self-life and other acceptance decently well. I moved with uncertainty decently well. I started a business. I had lots of anxious moments. I faced a lot of my fears. Even though I wasn't really addressing the body dysmorphic stuff, I still was addressing my fears in the best that I could. But what I was doing is I was walking around all day long, just constantly walking around telling myself like, oh, it's okay. You need to let it be there. But even though I was trying to apply acceptance as a whole, I was forcing it really, really, really badly. And it was becoming almost a compulsion. It was becoming a compulsion. Albert Ellis even talks about that in his book. He talks about in the Myth of Self-Esteem, and I believe chapter 22, when he's talking about Aaron Beck. Aaron Beck, who is they call the godfather of cognitive behavioral therapy. But, the reason why, it was Hayes with ACT, acceptance commitment therapy. He was saying that he didn't think it meshed very well with REBT because he thought that REBT can become compulsive. And he actually was correct about that in a way when you use it in the wrong way, but it doesn't need to be used compulsively. It just takes time to use that. So I was walking around being compulsive about the way I was, dealing with my symptoms. I was telling myself it's okay to be anxious, and I really wasn't actually accepting, and I was forcing it. I did that for about 5 months. And my anxiety went down quite a bit because I was doing it as a compulsive behavior. And I thought I knew better, but I didn't. This is why the journey takes, longer than we usually want for most people, myself being one of them. So I was listening to the 4-part series of Claire Weeks's on YouTube. It's just a 4-part talking where she, and I'm thinking about it, I said, man, I'm really engaging with these thoughts a lot more than I thought I was. I'm actually not really practicing letting it sit there, wearing anxiety like an uncomfortable coat. So I had to learn over the next 3 to 4 months to where I am now, maybe a little bit longer than that, because I'll be working on recovery for 18 months in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And it took me quite a bit of time to just let that go there. People always ask me, how do I not engage automatically? Well, the reality is you're more than likely going to engage automatically because you're so scared of what's going on. So when you're scared of what's going on, your mind's going to bring it up automatically. That's why, when it comes to rumination, you can try and cut out I'm purposely going to try and think about this, but that automatic fear that's just on autopilot, you can do all the things you want. You'll not be able to bring that down automatically like some people say. I've never seen that. You'll need to actually bring the fear down. And for myself, I had to work at unconditional self-life and other acceptance. So even when I have some spikes, I don't like to use how much percent I'm recovered or how much better I am, but with sensory OCD, it has no effect on my life anymore. It still lingers when I have relapses with my addictions or my body dysmorphia stuff. It will pop back up, but it never actually disrupts my life or stops me from doing stuff. So, the only way I got there was looking at life in an unconditional manner. I had to accept myself for who I was. Well, it's a multiple part. So in anxiety, fear, sensations of having anxiety, you have to work at accepting that you have anxiety and anxiety disorder. You have to accept that maybe the things you've been doing hasn't been working, which is okay. You don't have to berate yourself and, self-depreciation, because that doesn't do a whole lot. Accept that you can change your path and go forward. And then the 4th part, accept that might not work either. And as we're always talking to people in the community with anxiety symptoms, they're always like, I need to know if this is going to work. I saw someone say the other day, actually, and I responded back, that's not how it works, unfortunately. They said, if I just knew how this worked, I wouldn't obsess over it. Well, that's just not true. Knowing how something works is important, but it doesn't get under it completely. You'll have to actually move with uncertainty, work with unconditional self-life and other acceptance. So the main thing that's keeping the anxiety cycle stuck is the fear of fear. So the physical symptoms is the fear of it ruining your life. And the beliefs usually revolved around that are, I can't stand it, or my life is terrible, that catastrophizing mannerisms that we use. Well, not mannerisms, but catastrophizing belief systems that we hold based about that we think that life is going to be so much easier if we didn't have anxiety. And that's actually a good point to talk about. Myself included, and probably anyone else who's been going through OCD recovery, you more than likely have a belief at some point that when you reach, you walk over, whether this is a line, like a race, like a marathon, you step over and you're just recovered. There's just some imaginary finish line. If I work on my beliefs enough, I'll just step over a line. It's very gradual in the shift, so it doesn't work like that. It's more like checkpoints, like multiple different checkpoints and then setbacks and stuff like that. So, But that fear of it ruining your life and then realizing that, I can still do everything I want to do. I mean, I'm very fortunate. I live in 2021, okay? I can recover. I don't live in 1700. I don't live in 1100. I don't live in 500 BC, where if you told someone your beliefs, which were mainly revolved around scrupulosity and religious OCD, because that was the big thing with the day, God, hell, and being burning in the afterlife. Today, we have a lot of beliefs about pedophilia and, people not wanting to be rejected by society. Not saying you would like the act, but you can accept yourself if for some chance something like that did happen and the public perceived it and they ousted you. You would definitely not like that, but you could still accept yourself for who you are. So, all these little things added up to me realizing that the physical sensation of anxiety was not the actual thing bothering me. It was the belief. It was enhanced by the belief. Again, this doesn't mean that it wasn't annoying and it wasn't frustrating, but the belief I held really held me back. So let's cover some things I see that I don't think work. One thing I've been really working on myself, I actually redid this video. I was a little bit more aggressive when I made it yesterday. And I texted a moment and I said, you know what? I don't need to do that. It doesn't, and I was doing it off of demand that people need to listen because I do care a lot about helping others, but I can care too much and it becomes conditional. So, but let's cover some of the things that don't work out so well when it comes to ridding yourself of the anxiety symptoms in the moment. Grounding techniques, instant meditation, like if you feel a discomfort, you have to sit down your back and meditate on the spot, snapping of rubber bands, counting to 10 in your mind. All of these things don't really work too well, in my opinion, for the Gen Pop. And they certainly more than likely don't work for OCD because they become compulsive. I understand why we thought this for so long. We thought, the literature thought, and therapeutic approaches in psychotherapy thought that distraction in the way that they were using it was the best way to just, get your mind off of it. But it actually doesn't, because it makes you feel better in the moment, but it actually doesn't get you better. That's something that Dr. Albert Ellis talks about a lot. He talks about the difference between feeling better and getting better. And that's a huge difference right there. So this is what I did for myself. And I'm telling you, so I've talked to people. It doesn't matter, again, whether you have anxiety or no anxiety, intrusive thoughts or no intrusive thoughts. None of that combination of, it's still OCD is OCD. So don't try to figure out, I know it's easy to do that. Well, I don't have any anxiety, so maybe it's real. That's a dead end. You could still move with uncertainty and unconditional acceptance, no matter how your OCD presents itself in your particular case. So I had to realize that having anxiety is not as bad as I made it out to be. Even if it did all the things like with my body dysmorphic, I was afraid that I'd have so much cortisol in my system, it would ruin all my muscle, these crazy, ridiculous beliefs that it doesn't matter that you can't prove them true or not, because your OCD will move beyond that. So even if it did ruin all my progress in the gym, I could still go to the gym and work out. I could still hang out with my friends. I could still go hiking. I have hiked to 12, 13,000 feet severely. I hiked to 14,000 feet, 14,110 feet, very anxious. I mean, that day I just happened to be very anxious, and there was lack of oxygen when you're that high. So, I just did it because I knew that if I don't do these things and I avoided them, I would just stay in the cycle. It takes time to see this, that the physical symptoms of anxiety aren't as bad as we think they are, which is important to talk about. But once I brought down my catastrophizing, once I looked at it for what it really was, just an uncomfortable sensation, I could stay anxious for the rest of my life and still do most things I want to do. I could do everything I want to do. So, and I always say this, I want to end it with this. OCD happened to be the best thing to ever happen to me. Now, OCD has no benefits, so people will make YouTube videos, the benefits of OCD. There's none. It is a disorder. It's a very disrupting disorder if you don't know how to move into recovery. But the recovery journey can make you quite philosophical and look at life in a way that most people might not be able to see. And it's not that you're a better person than that person. You just were forced into an experience where you had to adapt. People have to adapt when they get put into unfortunate circumstances where they just kind of wither away in a sense. So we have the ability to recover. The sensations are not as bad as we think they are. It takes time and practice. You don't have to do any short-term distraction techniques. I personally don't meditate. If you meditate, that's great, but try not to do it for the purpose of trying to escape the moment. I don't practice mindfulness. I'm a lot more present. I've never actually forcefully practiced mindfulness. If you want to use mindfulness as a technique, I think that's great, but you just try not to use it in the way that most people do, in a distraction, like I need to be mindful. You don't need to be mindful. It's nice to be present in the moment, but you don't have to be. And just wearing anxiety like an uncomfortable coat is really important. So thank you so much for watching this video. I'll tell you some of the more I have coming out that I'll be making. So Rob wants me to do a video on Chapter 4, The Myth of Self-Esteem, Psychotherapy and the Value of a Human. I'm going to do a video on my gratitude article, but I'm going to put it in, why we're so fortunate to have OCD right now. I'm going to do another sleep video, and then chasing exposures for somatic OCD. And I'm going to actually talk about chasing exposures for somatic OCD and physical symptoms of anxiety because they run very close together. They're physical and they're very present in the way that they feel, not maybe in a thought manner or an image manner. So they coincide in the way that you go about your recovery. So thank you so much for watching and have a great day.